it was really a cakewalk to sweep in there, take Maduro out. Are you surprised it was that easy?
Look, it's always nice to say that you're not surprised because you sound like a wise man. But I'm generally have been calling for regime change in Venezuela many years now, and I'm very happy. That's my feeling. I'm very happy that Maduro is in prison. This is the first thing we have to say. I'm very happy no American soldiers were injured, and I'm very happy this was a useful act of American intervention. Yes, this is all very good. And I'm also very happy that they took the tanker, and I'm very happy that this symbol of tyranny in Latin America, which Maduro has turned into himself, is basically in custody, and that was really fantastic. But I have 5 buts. If you want to hear the buts, I'm ready to share.
We've Trump is now talking very tough to Colombia. He's basically saying that these guys, they need to get in line. They need to pull away from Russia and China, and that America is going to be the major influence. And this is all very good stuff. Marco Rubio is saying the same thing about Cuba. So they're using strong language, and they're giving these guys a chance to fall into line. I guess if if they're going to finally try to get rid of communist or significantly reduce the Chinese and the Russian and the communist influence in Latin America, do you think this is the right way to go about it?
But here we need to make a difference, a differentiation, because Maduro is a part of the axis of evil. Maduro's Venezuela is a total disaster state economically and politically. Yeah, this is very unique. Yeah? There is a second state in Latin America which is similar. That's of course Cuba. These are communist dictatorships and tyrannies which need to be regime changed. Yeah? It's very contrary to a socialist president who came legitimately to power, like Mr. Petro in Colombia. Colombia, in general, is a NATO ally. This is a global partner of NATO. Even when this president has now said he wants to leave, yeah, and he doesn't like NATO, but still the country is a market economy, it's a democracy. He came to power democratically elected, and the same is true of Mr. Lula in Brazil. I don't like Mr. Lula. I think he is a pain in the ass, and he is with Putin, and he is a socialist, and he is corrupt. And the same is of Mr. Petro, possibly. I don't know him even so well, actually, and I don't care. But he is not somebody who is a candidate for regime change. Yeah? Trump is, of course, entertaining this kind of, yeah, we do, but that's absolutely nonsense. We are not in the business of changing socialist elected presidents in market economies and in countries which we have just included in NATO, like Colombia, or we have included them in the OECD, like Colombia is a certified market economy, like member of OECD. And Brazil is a candidate for OECD, and we just concluded a free trade agreement. So because we don't like the president and the elections of the last time, we don't regime change it. We regime change countries where the disaster of a communist president has really led to a total economic and political and democratic collapse where the people are slaughtered in the streets and 5 million Venezuelans had to leave. Millions of Cubans have to leave in the last 50 or 70 years. Yeah. So these are the candidates. So Cuba, yes. Colombia, no. That's the short answer. But I have to tell you something about Venezuela because I have some buts still, because we have not seen real regime change. This was a decapitation and a kidnapping of a president. Yes, fine, well done. But the reality is what we need to do is to regime change the countries. I want millions of Venezuelans to storm back into Venezuela because the country is free and they go back to their families and to their life and to rebuild the country. Has not happened. I want the Chavistas, Socialistas, disasters who have led this tyranny to go into hiding and run to Russia. Has not happened. I want this Delcy Rodriguez to be in prison the same like the key political leaders of the Chavez regime. And I want to have a tribunal where the crimes of the last 25 years are prosecuted. This must happen because they have committed serious crimes. And Trump's kind of appeasement of the Rodriguez regime is not acceptable. And it will anyhow not last because there will be a revolution in Venezuela. And just this kind of semi-regime change, Trump style, is absolutely not going to last. And you will see that 2026, there will be major changes in Venezuela, because simply they will go into economic collapse because they need so much money, which they will get from nowhere now. And then Trump's kind of oil deal will not work, because all the focus on oil is totally ridiculous. Oil is an oversupply commodity now in the world, very expensive in the case of Venezuela. And under this condition, nobody from America will invest in Venezuela as long as there is not a real kind of market regime established. Yeah? That's absolutely sure. So I call for regime change in Venezuela, serious one. Venezuela in the free world as a member of Mercosur and with a real democracy. And first of all, they need free and fair elections. And then you will see that the people will vote for this Maria Gonzalez guy, or from the Edmond Gonzalez. And there's several key leaders. You can follow them on X. They have millions of followers and they have the legitimacy of the people. They will win these elections, and the Chavistas will never be in power again. And the minimum Trump has to say to the regime now, in July, we have early elections and they will be democratically supervised. And then there will be a peaceful transition. If not, the Navy has to shoot them into submission.
It seemed like there was very likely a stand down by Maduro's security. Do you think that happened because they told her, look, stand down and we'll let you stay in power? Do you think that's what happened, or?
Look, I can only speculate. There's a lot of media reports who say that this happened. I think this I'm a Vienna-based analyst. I have not been in Latin America ever, actually. So I've only been in Cuba, in Mexico, and that's my exposure in Guatemala. So, I have no insights prior more than what the New York Times has reported. But the ultimate thing is, logically, in the hindsight, you can conclude that nobody from the Venezuelan air defense generals, they probably have also air command, and they have assets to shoot at airplanes and helicopters, and they have not shot down any American helicopter. And normally, even the most defunct air defense regime of a big city in the world can do that. And they were long enough over Venezuela, over Caracas, that several of these helicopters would have normally been shot down. Maybe the Americans have so superior kind of cyber capabilities that they blacked out all the systems. That's also possible, and they certainly have that. But in reality, I'm sure that some of the regime have been decided that Maduro had stolen enough from them, because what we have in the reports, he was himself very greedy and not very nice to his fellow thieves. And so probably they delivered him to the knife and to the sword. But, that's a regime change on the cheap, yeah? Without American lives, without real investment, but you achieve only mediocre results. You don't really bring these millions of people back. You don't have the refugees being allowed to come back. And if America doesn't want to have so many refugees, then create good living conditions in Venezuela. It's the biggest source of immigrants in Latin America. And if you want them to go back, these millions of people, then they had a reason to live. You have to remove the reason to live. Yeah? What is the reason to live? It was a total disaster regime. So let's make it a market economy, and let's do it like Poland, have the flat tax, stabilize the currency, reform them like Colombia, and it will be a decent country. In 5 years, millions of people will be back. And I'm actually optimistic this will anyhow happen, because this kind of shortcut things which Trump tries to do, regime change by Twitter and shouting things. Regime change is always a bloody affair. You lose soldiers, you lose people. It's revolutions is a bloody affair. It's not an easy thing to argue. I never in my life have easily recommended revolution or regime change, because this puts a lot of people in harm's way, and there's always a lot of people dying in revolutions, ever in the history. But when the situation is as bad as in Maduro's case, or in the Venezuelan case, it's absolutely justified. The same for Iran and also for Russia. In the case of China, for example, they have managed to keep stability and decency. So there will be no revolution there, and it's also not justified. You have to have really doing very bad things in order to deserve a revolution. as it's done in the case of Iran. And I always feel with the brave people of Iran and Venezuela that they had to endure so much suffering for so long, so much injustice, so much poverty, so much misery. And then they had enough and they rise, and we should be supporting them. Because I was always very grateful for the Americans to make these huge investments in blood and money to liberate us from the Nazis in Europe. The New Zealanders helped as well, and many came to help us. It was not easy for your grandfather generation to do this. Many of them died, and it was huge cost, and it was a big investment, if you can call it in economic terms. And you have to do that, because there was also many people in Austria and Germany who didn't want to be with the Nazi regime, and so many of them wanted. And you cannot reform entrenched regimes. It's impossible to make demonstrations in Nazi Germany. It's impossible to elect a nice leader in Iran today. It's impossible to vote Putin out. You have to do it the military way. You have to do it the revolutionary way. That's the sad truth of history.
And Cuba does look like it's the next target with what Marco Rubio is saying, and it seems that they'll be able to take out whatever resistance they may have pretty easily. You're talking about regime change there. How do you see that going? Do you think they'll try and resist? Do you think they'll get support from Russia and China to where this could be a problem for Trump? Or do you think that they will be able to take over the country relatively easily?
First of all, now, to my best understanding of the situation, is already the oil is running out because the Venezuelan oil is no longer reaching Cuba. Cuba is an island which recommends itself as well for naval blockade. So you can do it relatively with less harm by naval blockading Cuba. And then you don't allow any traffic into Cuba for some weeks. And then the regime will be already very weakened. Yeah? And then you make sure that you insist on a democratic process of free and fair elections, and you will not have to send a lot of troops there. And if, the way this works today, the troops are a little bit overestimated in a sense, because today everything is done by drones and by cyber war. And so you send the drones from the fleet, and you destroy the key military installations of Cuba. And that has already a tremendous effect. And then you basically threaten military invasion without having to do it. Yeah, the same concept can be happening in Venezuela. And American troops are no longer so needed like they were in Vietnam or in Iraq. You can do it basically quite remotely, to my best guess, because in Iran, for example, you have a lot of people on the street. So the moment they see that America is destroying the military installations of the Iranian regime, they will all follow up very enthusiastically and storm the compounds of the regime, and then regime change is achieved, because that's the basic nature of regime change. You control the key leverages and tools of power, the military, the media, the government institutions. It's not so many buildings you have to control. And you have to have the visible kind of fall of the regime by either the death or of one of the tyrants, or you have basically him fleeing abroad. Yeah? And once that is achieved, you have achieved regime change, and then you do free and fair elections. And then, of course, you need a lot of help to get it right. But we have a lot of experience now globally with that one. And there is experts like me, for example, who have done that in Kosovo, for example. But there are thousands, if not hundreds and thousands of people who know how to build up a transition economy, to build institutions towards democracy. And we have a lot of experience now the last 30 years in doing that.